I think the X series of games may be one of the most immersive space sandboxes ever created, from the way you start as a single pilot with your one ship to the end game where you have thousands of ships, stations throughout the galaxy, and you're the leader of an entire space empire. Not even Sins of a Solar Empire, that type of thing, really allows you this granularity of control where you're in the cockpit, you're walking around stations at one point, and then you can zoom out and zoom out, both figuratively and actually in the game, to have this overview. It's like two games in one almost. Your Wing Commander, where you're flying with your spaceship, to micromanaging an entire empire. I played X3 and that had all this. My history with it is kind of weird in that I didn't realize the scope of that game until I'd been playing it an awful long time. I hadn't been aware of the X series, and I didn't know that you could have trading ships, mining ships. I didn't know that you could build space stations. I just thought it was a little bit like a modern version of Wing Commander. And when the true scope of that game emerged for me, I was blown away. With coming into X4, obviously I know a lot more and I'm expecting that. So the question is, does it deliver in terms of an experience that is like X3 but modernized? It does. It's really good. You couldn't walk around in X3. You didn't get a feeling of your character's skin, being inside your character's skin. There's nothing quite like walking through one of these space stations and going into your ship, sitting down at the controls. It really does make you feel like your character is physically there in the space. And then you also have this vast universe with and this sandbox element, setting out into the universe and really feeling like, wow, I'm out here exploring. And you do have to explore unless you look at guides and stuff. You have to go out into the universe, find all the jump gates. The story of the game is that things are in flux, and the jump gate system that allows these various races to move across the galaxy is always being messed around with or malfunctioning. Whole systems and civilizations are getting lost, cut off from one another, then finding their way back through the jump gate system when it comes back online and stuff. It's a deep universe to explore with an incredible encyclopedia that has so much information. But I stayed away from it for a reason. When it came out, it was very buggy. I watched some reviews and commentators on YouTube that I respect talking about it. The game released in a very buggy state, so I've left it for 4 years. It came out in 2018, until it might be a little bit more polished. Is it more polished? Yeah, I can only assume that it is more polished, but it still has an awful lot of bugs. Nothing game-breaking, but quite frustrating bugs. I get stuck in scanning mode, this crazy whine going on. I have to reload the game to get rid of the sounds. You clip through the geometry of stations and structures all the time, and either have to restart the game or boost in random directions to try and free yourself. It's that kind of jankiness that makes the game an odd sort, and the series itself an odd sort of fish, in that, is it a AAA game? It certainly has some great graphics and scope is huge, but it also feels quite indie and niche in a lot of ways. The voice acting is not top tier. The geometry of the characters is strange. They have giraffe necks at certain points, and this is throughout the game. It's not too bad. You can live with it, but all the time you kind of like, yeah, that's a little bit off. There's some jankiness. There's definitely some jankiness going on there. The space combat and the way you fight is not quite as deep as something like, say, Elite Dangerous, where there's a lot of tactics and strategy to how you move through that game. There is in X4, but not to a huge extent, because really the game ramps up from ship-to-ship dogfighting to controlling vast fleets of ships and capital ships and things. So the individual piloting is not as deep and refined as something that really focuses there, but those games don't allow you to create vast armadas to play with, and then the strategy becomes about positioning capital ships and launching fleets of fighters. It's such a strange game in a lot of ways. But as I said at the beginning, I don't think any other game has this kind of scope. The likes of Elite Dangerous, which I've mentioned already, and Star Citizen seem to take this in a very multiplayer direction, we're not going to create a whole universe unless it's online and everyone can play in it together. I know you can play offline with Elite Dangerous, but generally those games are multiplayer. This is single player. This is space RPG. We have created a world for you, the individual player, to explore, with an economy that is functioning, with NPCs that are trading materials, factions that are trying to invade one another's space, hold the others off, and you get involved on whatever side you want to. You can pick a side, whatever side you want to play with, whether you want to be a trader who supplies materials, just makes money, or you want to be on the front lines, you can decide that. There is a main quest line to play through, which is not an incredible story or anything like that, but it does connect nicely into the theme of what's happening with the jump gates and this universe, and allows you to affect that and take part in that to a certain extent, creating new technologies as you investigate these anomalies that are taking on. I don't want to spoil the plot. There are a number of expansions now. It's been 4 years, so the Egosoft is constantly supporting the game, and this is their claim to fame, I guess. This is the game series that they are known for, and it's unique, absolutely unique. I love it. For me, it is a lot more immersive than something like, I'm picking out Sins of a Solar Empire, but I just mean those kinds of universe empire building games in space. I would choose this because I feel more connected to the world. I feel more immersed in the world. I'm allowed to walk around in it. But one of the problems with the series is also how obtuse it is and how difficult it is to do basic things. Sometimes it's to do with the scope of the game. There is so much that you can do in the game and how to manage all this through menus and what you click. And then other times it's just hard to fathom why they made certain decisions. I want to create a fleet, something you need to do in this game an awful lot. Why isn't there a create fleet button? Well, you have to click on one of your individual units, then right click on another unit and tell it to defend that unit, and then the game will automatically create a fleet, and then you add other ships by giving them orders and they will form a fleet in that way. Okay, well, I didn't know that. Now I do, but I did have to go away and research it, and there are so many examples of that, just doing very basic things. How do I tell a trading ship not to trade wares freely throughout the galaxy, but service a particular space station? How do I tell it what the space station needs? I would challenge anyone to figure this stuff out themselves. They have really tried hard to have a series of tutorials in the game, but those in themselves can sometimes be a little bit hard to understand. You will get to certain points where it's not clear in the tutorial what you need to do to progress the virtual seminar that you're taking place in the game. I do like the fact that you can be playing the main sandbox game and you can be doing these tutorials while you're still playing your main game. There are some tutorials that you can do before you start anything like flight school. They are trying really hard. Still, it is a game that takes a lot of research and you have to invest a lot of time in. It's janky as hell, and some of the ways that they do things, it's just hard to understand why they chose to do it that way sometimes. If I want to see my character's inventory, you would think I would press I to see my character's inventory. No, I click on the player tab, then I scroll down to one of 12 buttons down the left hand side of the screen and I click player inventory. There's no shortcut. There's no inventory key. It's what are you doing, guys? The basics. Just give me the basics. That would help. It reminded me back in the day before everyone knew how to play Minecraft. What you had to do to play Minecraft, you just had to watch videos, you had to research online, there was no manual. And there is for X4, there's documentation, it's out there, but don't expect to intuitively understand everything about the game. So it is fantastic and it will absorb so much of your time. The upgrade system in this is really interesting. I can't remember it from X3, but basically you're building your empire, getting different kinds of ships. Upgrading those ships was one thing, but in this game you have many more reasons to go out and loot things, and you have the opportunity to upgrade your ships and make them unique to you, and research certain technologies and things. They really give you a lot more quest stuff to do in X4 than there was in X3. Graphically, it does the job. It's not anything to write home about. There are more graphically impressive games. Some of the guns are very satisfying to use. The sound, a lot of options for toggling things on and off in the menus. You have a lot of bleeps and boops going on, but you can go into all of it and kind of turn off certain alerts and so on. When you start the game, it's great that your trader tells you every time it sells some wares, and you get a little excitement every time you hear the alert. Once you've got 100 traders throughout the galaxy doing that all the time, you're going to want to turn that alert off. So you have to go into the menus. There are other things you need to do, like global orders for your fleets and stuff that are not set to the most logical thing from the very beginning. So what should my trader do when it's attacked by pirates? Well, flee. No, the game sets it to attack. Unless you go in and set your global orders correctly, your traders are just going to get slaughtered all the time. You have to learn that. It's all a learning curve. Like I say, there are some strange decisions that the developers make, and they are both geniuses and crazy people in certain respects. Definitely one worth playing in 2022. Still a little bit buggy, but not as bad as it was, and nothing game breaking. So if you can stomach the jankiness of those bugs, if you can also invest the time to understand the obtuse system of controls for the game, do a look at tutorials, read up, you're going to really get a lot out of the game. But it's one of those that you have to invest. But that's what I like. I like games that there's a sense of discovery, not only in the storyline of the game and the setting of the game going out into space, but there's a sense of discovery for me as a player, trying to understand a game, coming to understand its systems and mastering it to a certain extent. X4 asks you to do that. It demands that you do that in order to get what you need out of the game. So if you're looking for a space simulation that's not online, that is not geared to multiplayer, this is it. This is the one for me. You can be a space pirate, never get involved in the stations, never get involved in the trading, or you can never set foot, you can never pilot the ships yourself. You can pilot all of your ships with the AI pilots and crews that you staff them with. Not very many games allow you to do both of those things so extensively. X4 does. That's my feeling on X4. Let me know yours in the comments. I've been Napyet. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.